Mr. Simpson takes a trip to outer space. Here's your look at the new Super7 The Simpsons Deep Space Homer. Inspired by the Simpsons episode Deep Space Homer, this made-to-order 7-inch fully articulated Ultimates figure comes with interchangeable heads and hands, and a variety of accessories, including the inanimate carbon rod. Each Ultimates figure comes packaged in a deluxe slipcase window box. Collect the whole first wave of Simpsons Ultimate figures. Just before Homer has a collision course with an ant colony, let's go ahead and measure off the figure. Now, right now, I've got him with the helmet on. You can, though, take off the helmet, as the figure also has 2 other swappable heads. Taking, though, the tape measure right to the very top of the figure's head, with the helmet included, Deep Space Homer stands about 7 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 17 centimeters tall. Coming to us from episode 15 from season 5, entitled Deep Space Homer, in which Homer does take a trip out into outer space with a bunch of skilled astronauts to do some scientific research. Well, things don't go all that well. Of course, with Homer Simpson on board, calamity and chaos ensue. The figure does come included with episode-specific accessories, which is good. I also like the idea that Super7 did actually name this figure after that specific episode, but I have to kind of wonder what Super7's logic was not to release just a regular family member of The Simpsons, giving us just a regular Homer Simpson. Sure, it's fine to throw in an episode-specific character, but I have to think that if the longevity of this line isn't great enough to, of course, cover off all the regular normal characters, why would they jump the gun so quickly and give us a very different-looking Homer Simpson instead of just giving us a regular, casually dressed Homer? Anyways, though, the figure comes included with some swappable heads, actually 3 total swappable heads, ant colony, a bag of chips, some loose scattered chips, and a pair of interchangeable hands. The figure also comes included with a carbon-based rod. Love the fact that he comes included with the inanimate carbon-based rod. I'm going to take myself the black light here for a second, just kind of shine around it. It seems to have some glowing qualities to it. This can be held in Homer's hand. He actually doesn't have the means to hold it right now, but he does have extra hands that you may or may not be able to see down below. I love the idea that he comes with the inanimate carbon rod. Putting that to the side, the figure also comes included with the ant colony. Horrible freedom, unfortunately, is in the future of this ant colony. Homer smashes into it, and of course all these ants are scattered and floating around in space, along with the bags of chips that he comes included with as well. The ant colony does have, for all intents and purposes, tiny little specks that could somewhat look like ants, although they're not actually moving. This doesn't break for obvious reasons, but it does have a little tiny support legs on the back of this, so you can prop this up, although not well. A little bit of banging, this thing's going to take a tumble. Still, it's nice to see that they actually included something like that. I would be really honestly disappointed if an ant colony wasn't included with Deep Space Homer. Something, though, I am rather disappointed by is the fact that he comes included not necessarily the bag of chips. That's not the part that disappoints me. The bag of chips is hard plastic. Lots of air, I'm sure, is packed inside of this. You're probably only getting about 14 chips inside the bag. He also comes included with a hand. And the hand actually is good for holding the bag of chips. So if you wanted to have him, let's just get my hand out of the way here. If you want to have him holding the bag, you can also do that as well. They have put little tiny indentations in the top of the bag, so it sort of looks like he's pinching the foiled bag. Love that. What I don't really necessarily love is the fact he comes included with all these random chips. Now, again, if you were to go back and look at the episode, it is right. But what am I going to do with all these tiny chips other than just lose them? You get a total, unless I've lost some of them, you get a total of 7 chips. And they seem to be all the wrinkled cuts. So if you are somebody that likes wrinkled chips, rippled chips, it comes included with those. Again, I don't know if I would necessarily have packed so many just loose things like this, as small as they may be. They're most definitely going to be lost. With that same hand that we actually had him holding the bag with, you can take one of the chips at least, get that wedged in there. So it looks like Homer is holding it. Could possibly a smarter solution have been provided here, maybe giving us just a hand that already has the chips in place? And again, what am I going to really do with all these extra chips? Maybe they could also had these attached by clear plastic, sort of just had like a stream of chips. Not that Homer really comes included with a flight stand, which is also one thing I really wish the figure could have come included with. If you did want to replicate the scene of Homer floating inside the pod and actually eating up the chips that are floating with him, you can't really pull that off because the figure doesn't come included with a flight stand. Still, all these random chips I know I'm going to lose, so I'm going to have to put them in tiny little bags just to ensure that I'm not going to lose them at all. Figure also comes included, we already talked about the fact he comes included with his gripping hand. Good for holding the chips, good for holding the chip bag. But the figure also comes included with slightly larger gripping hands, which are ideal for holding the inanimate carbon rod. You can hold it in his hand. It doesn't hold the tightest, but at least it's going to hold it in his hands. And he actually comes with a pair of those, so you can have them on either side of his body. Or, hold on a second, either side of his body. Changing out the hands, by the way, isn't super hard. You're just going to hold onto the forearm, wiggle that off, and remove the post from the hole, and then just pop that back into place. And then Homer Simpson does have the swappable hands. Those are all his accessories. Again, I really wish the figure could have come included with a flight stand, because I don't know about yourselves, the people that are currently watching this video. For I know myself, at least the person behind the camera, I would love to have gotten this guy in a flight pose, but unfortunately, there's no means, there's no hole, there's nothing on the back of the figure's body where you could actually have him in a floating pose. I love the idea that you could have done that. Unfortunately, you can't. The figure does have a removable helmet. The removable helmet simply just pop it. Just pop the end of it. And be careful, though, while removing it, because the sizing of the hole at the bottom here, one thing you're probably going to find yourself doing a lot, I've done it already, is the very end of it, the very small opening, grazes Homer's nose every single time I do it. And even when putting back on the helmet, it does fit over his head, but you have to be very careful when doing it. It's kind of like that carnival game where you've got a little ring on a pole and you have to get it along the wire without touching the sides. So I have to do the same thing with Homer here. Just again, pop it off. I'm going to show you how close in quarters it actually gets. You sort of have to slide it forward, get it around his nose, and then slide it off like this. To be fair, this isn't actually the head sculpt that comes included with this Homer when I get him out of the box. That head sculpt is actually for this head right here. Now, he does have 3 heads available. One nice touch to this one is actually this is inside the helmet. So when you do take the helmet off and you turn it around, on the back, it actually says insert brain here. A nice little touch in reference to the episode. He has the little hairs there on the top. They're made of softer plastic. I got to imagine, too, when we eventually get ourselves a Homer Simpson in a regular casual outfit, they're probably going to be wanting to use the same head sculpts, or at the very most, make it smart enough that they could use the same sockets. Because obviously, you're not going to be able to use all 3 heads with Homer here. You're going to have to put one. You got to pick one and put the others aside. So if, at the very least, when we get this one, and we also have this one, which is one of my favorites, I'd like to think that we could actually use these with a future Homer figure. I mean, it would make some smart sense to me be using the same socket size joint, right? I mean, obviously, you're not going to want to change the joints so that you can then use these for a future Homer, if hopefully that's the case. Changing out the heads, by the way, and also one thing I really like is this one right here. This is him kind of garbling down, munching down the chips that are floating in the pod inside the spaceship. One thing also this would work quite well for is a shinning Homer, something we could certainly do, where he's going through, of course, the cast of characters from 60 Minutes. He's got himself a little stopwatch with him. This is an ideal head sculpt for perhaps a shinning Homer. Spin this around. The paint is actually really good on all of these. You can see that the tongue has been painted nicely. Unfortunately, the inside of his mouth is really dark, but you can see that there is still an Adam's apple, or sorry, a tonsil at the back there. Adam's apple's down here. A little tonsil at the back of his throat. It's a little harder to see, though. Teeth are very white, very nice and white in paint. The looks like the plastic itself is this bright yellow, and then they would have painted the lines, the M on the back here for what's left of Homer's hair. And again, you got the little strands there on the top there, softer plastic. Changing out any one of the heads. It's fairly easy to remove. It's a little harder, though, to put back into place. By the way, the heads are all on ball joints. Just to take the head and remove it from the ball joint, just be careful while doing this. Just pop this off. And if you're having any problems, by the way, getting this off, I would certainly recommend using the hot water trick or hair dryer trick as well. And then we're going to go ahead and pop this head in place. While I'm going with this head, there's a reasoning for it. I'm going to just wiggle this back onto the post. Now, I've heated the heads in all hot water, but the plastic has started to harden now a little bit, so it's going to be a little harder to put back into place. Why I did want to go with this head instead of, I would say, the defaulted head sculpt, which is this one right here, is that this one does still allow you to get the helmet in place, but when you're putting it in, you have to put it in on an angle, feed it down, and it does fit over top of his head. So if you thought only 2 of the heads would actually allow him to hold it, you can technically also attach this one also as well. You're just going to have a little more harder of a time when it comes to taking the helmet off. You just don't, again, want to graze the nose, and certainly don't want to hit the eyes either, because that's going to chip the paint. This one is a little bit harder to remove, but all of them does technically allow for the helmet to go on top of it. As for the rest of Homer's body, mostly made here of white plastic. There are a few little details that they've added there with some darker gray. The zipper is really nicely handled there in a more silver paint. The logo there at the top corner. But mostly, again, it's all just a regular white painted, a white body. I can't tell whether they've actually painted the plastic or they've just actually left the plastic alone. But there's some really nice details. Of course, you got the outlining there on the bottoms of the cuffs of the legs, the undersoles of his shoes. Surprisingly enough, does have holes on the bottoms of his feet. And yet none of these figures come included with display stands. I wonder why they actually put holes on the bottoms like this. Still, though, I kind of wish that there could have been a post system, something on the back of the figure's body. So yeah, if you did want to have him, let's just get, for example, his head up. Get his arms back just a little bit. You can also bend the knees. The knees are really tight on this figure, but you can bend the knees. And yeah, for all intents and purposes, you could put him in a floating pose, and then you could take yourself. I mean, there's no way you'd be able to get around this. You'd have to kind of just have the chips levitate. You'd probably have to use a string or something like that. But really, if they had just put like a bit of plastic, clear plastic with all the chips sort of attached to it, just had a little floating thing that had a post here, you could at least replicate that. You can't do that right now with the figure as it is. For the articulation, though, for Deep Space Homer, we're going to stick with this head sculpt right now. Be careful that you're not going to be pushing these down, because again, they're softer plastic. So head is on a ball joint. Head does go pretty high up, in fact. So if you wanted to have him in floating pose, not sure how you're going to pull it off, you can do it. Head does look down, only by just a little bit. You can rock it back and forth, and yeah, you can twist the head all the way around. The upper torso seems to be also on a ball joint. There's a little bit more limitations, of course. You can only rotate the upper body up, back and forth this way, just a little bit further up and just a little bit down. I mean, it might not even look like I've done anything just to that, but you can actually just move it only a little bit. Really, the rotation is where you get most of the mileage from it. The arms are on pin and socket joints, so yeah, you can rotate them all the way around. They do hinge out, but only just by a little bit. That's about it. 45 degrees, would you safe to say 45? 45, 45, 45? Okay, 45. A single hinge only in the elbow. I want to say shoulder, in the elbow. That also rotates the forearm also as well. The hands rotate also all the way around. There's also a hinge joint in the hands themselves. Legs seem to be on ball joints. You can in fact see the ball joints on the insides of the legs. They're very limited though. You can take the legs and move them only forward by that much. You can move them back only by that much. A single hinge in the knee allows once again the lower leg to rotate, and there's articulation not only in the boot up and down this way, but you can also rock it back only slightly a bit back and forth this way as well. You know, again, like I like the look of Homer, and I got to say I'm happy that I looked at Homer as a Simpson character first instead of looking at the other ones that we are getting from this wave. The Mo, which I'm looking forward to actually having a look at Mo, and Robotic Itchy and Scratchy. Itchy and Scratchy as robots, yeah, I mean, it's fun that we, maybe as a wave, a few waves down the road, but I don't know if I would have released Robot Itchy and Scratchy right away, because if those aren't things that you really want to get, that halves the first wave and only really then leaves Deep Space Homer, and it also leaves Mo as only the 2 characters that you're likely going to be picking up. Still, though, I kind of wish that Super 7 went the approach when it comes to this wave, or any of the future Simpsons waves. Each wave should have had a Simpsons family member, regular outfits. They also should have then thrown in a B character, someone that you would recognize right away from the town of Springfield, like a Mo. Mo makes perfect sense. Or like an Apu, someone like that could go along well with a regular Simpsons character. And then throw in the more obscure single episode only characters for the other half of that first wave, or any of the subsequent waves afterwards. Like the look of Deep Space Homer, but I have to kind of keep thinking to myself, I would have much rather a casual looking Homer, one that we see in every episode of The Simpsons, all the episodes of The Simpsons, not just the one episode we got from season 5. Though I do think that Super 7 was the right company to handle the Simpsons property based on other licenses they've done figures for before, I have to still wonder and question why they chose Deep Space Homer to be the very first Simpsons family member that we get. Yeah, it would have been fine to get a Deep Space Homer, but this should have been something that would have worked later on. I mean, we've already seen an advertisement and promotional images for a Moo Moo Homer. 2 Homers, and yet we still don't get a casually dressed Homer. Again, take what I say with a little bit of grain of salt behind the camera here, but I really think for each wave, each of the waves of the 4 figures, I think 4 or 5 characters that we're getting for each wave, the first character right away should have been a Simpsons character, like a regular casually dressed Simpsons family. So like for the first wave, get a regular Homer. Second wave would have been Bart. I'm just throwing out a Bart. Third would have been Marge. Fourth could have been Elisa. Fifth could have been a Maggie. And of course, with Maggie, you'd have to throw in like Snowflake, and you have to throw in Santa's little helper just to kind of beef it up because Maggie would have been so small. But then along with that, throw in a B-tier character, someone that you would recognize right away from the town of Springfield. Like Mo makes sense. Maybe the next wave, it could have been Kent Brockman. But then the other two characters for each of the waves, or three figures, because I think we're getting a Poochie from the first wave also as well. The other rest of the characters from half that wave could have been the more episode specific, like one and we're done. First time you only see them and you never see them again. Those would have been the fine characters to throw in. Because again, like I have to wonder, this is fine to get a Homer like this, looking like this right now. But in order to accommodate the fact that we have to get all 5 Simpsons family members, and already 2 Homers we get appearances of are episode-only specific characters like Deep Space Homer and Moo Moo Homer. I don't know. I have to really wonder what Super 7 were thinking to give us this figure so quickly, so early, right away into the wave. Other than that, though, I do like the look of Deep Space Homer. Yes, it would have been nice if he could have come included with a flight stand. I don't think the extra loose chips that he came included with make any sense whatsoever, because again, you're just going to ultimately lose them. Ant Colony is a nice touch. Just be careful when it comes to removing his helmet. And this head, especially of all the other, of the 3, this is the one that has the hardest time to get the helmet around, because you have to put it on an awkward angle to watch that you don't hit the nose or the mouth indirectly. But what do you guys think of this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you had the chance and you were designing the figure line for Super 7, what kind of characters would you want to have seen in the Simpsons wave? Do you think that maybe Super 7 went a little too obscure to be giving us a Deep Space Homer for the first wave? Should we have maybe gotten ourselves a more casually dressed Homer? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also as well, if you guys are interested and would like to get Deep Space Homer for yourself, I did actually find this one over on Entertainment Earth's website, to which I will provide the link down below in the video description. You guys can grab this one for yourself. We're also going to be looking at the rest of this wave that consists of Mo, also Robotic, Itchy, and Scratchy. Again, I don't know why we're going to be getting Itchy and Scratchy in robots for the very first wave. Of course, we're going to talk a lot more of that when we get into the review of those guys. But yeah, we are going to be looking at the rest of the wave. So if you guys are interested, and first of all, enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you're loving the content you guys are seeing, do certainly want to stick around for more. Then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And yes, we will be looking at the rest of the Simpsons wave from Super 7. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.